Hello, welcome to the Positive Posting Conversation, the show about how to have a better relationship with your dog and cat. I'm Zazie Todd, author of the books Bark, Wag and Purr, and creator of companion animal psychology blog. My co-host, Kristi Benson, is a dog trainer and anthropologist, and she also works at the Academy for Dog Trainers. We can't give advice on your pet, so if you have concerns, see your dog trainer, cat behaviourist, or veterinarian as appropriate. Thanks for joining us today. What is demand barking and what can we do about it, or should we do about it? Welcome to the Positive Posting Conversation. I'm Zazie Todd. I'm joined as always by my friend and colleague Kristi Benson. Hey Kristi.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm good.
I think barking is a really useful topic for us to be talking about, but I think it's also really important to start by explaining what we mean by demand barking, or maybe even starting with some of the other types of barking, because dogs bark for a range of different reasons. And if you're having issues with your dog barking, it really helps to know why they're barking. So, for example, we can get dogs barking because they're afraid of something. And in that case, we need to do something either to stop the dog from having to face the thing that they're afraid of, or to stop them from being afraid of it altogether, or ideally combine both of those together. And also we get dogs who watchdog bark. So they're dogs that are just saying, hey, there's someone coming to the door, for example. And that is, again, that's something quite different from fear barking. And so it really helps to know what kind of barking the dog is doing, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah. And I agree. Like dogs bark, like you said, for many reasons. It's kind of one of their main communication tools, and we're lucky to have it, even though it may feel like a giant headache. We're lucky that they're so ready to communicate that way. But it does, we do have to sort of sit back when we first hear the dog barking, or if barking has become a problem enough that you're like listening to podcasts or seeking a trainer, figuring out why is the dog barking in the first place? How are we going to lump it into a big category? Because if your dog is scared, we don't want to be ignoring that. We want our dog to stop being scared. That's, directive number one.
Yeah, and we've got a separate episode which is all about fear and anxiety in dogs and the things that everyone needs to know if their dog is actually reactive or fearful. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And today we're just talking about demand barking, which in a way we can say is the dog barking because they want something. I mean, that's kind of what the name of it means, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So what demand barking is, how it usually evolves, is dogs will try out different behaviors to get what they want, just like all of us. Like we try out going to work to get money to feed ourselves, So we'll try, if we come across a door, we'll try pushing, we'll try pulling because we want to get through the door. So dogs will try various things. Say if your dog wants to be patted, or if your dog, surprise of all surprises, wants to eat more, they'll try different things. They might try pawing. They might try, nosing you. They might try sitting cutely if you're lucky, all of these things. And sometimes dogs try barking when they want something. The typical scenarios I think that dog trainers hear about a lot are dogs want food, dogs want patting, dogs want door opening services. So the dog tries barking, and because barking is annoying to us people, we respond. We're like, oh, please stop barking. I'm just going to pet you till you shut up. Or, oh, you're barking. It's giving me a headache. I'm going to open that door to let you out, right? So the dog tries something on and it works. And dogs, being smart mammals, make that connection. Sometimes they make it right away. Sometimes, it might take a few trials. They make that connection and they learn, oh, the labor of barking earned me the paycheck of what I wanted.
Yeah, so the dog is not upset at all in these cases, and they are getting what they want. And what's more, we probably have been rewarding them for this barking accidentally for quite a while before it gets to the point where we think, oh no, that barking is so annoying. I have to do something about it. So we have that history of reinforcing the behavior, which means it's already quite a strong behavior, basically.
Yes.
And anything that we've already reinforced for a long time, it can sometimes take a little bit of time to sort that out. But I think maybe the phrase demand barking is a bit of a misnomer, would you say?
I admit, so I use it. We're going to talk about this later. I have a course to help humans who have demand barking dogs, and I use it freely in the course. And I think it's just something that's become part of our language. But I think as dog guardians, I think it's worth us taking a step back and going, demand barking. Is that really? So we've taught our dog tried something on, and we've taught them that it works. So to them, this is labor that they're doing to earn a paycheck that they want in the world. So calling it demand barking, it implies something moral, that the dog is demanding something that they don't deserve. Whereas in fact, they deserve what they earned because they earned it, right? In their mind and in how we've been training them. So I think, sometimes people use other phrases to try and capture the fact that they're requesting. They call it request barking. And that to me also kind of gets on my nerves a tiny bit, because like I go to work and I put in labor and then I get a paycheck. Is that demand working? Is that request working? No, I'm working. I'm doing labor for a reward, a life consequence of getting, the money that I need to survive, to pay my bills. So sometimes people call it operant barking, which is a really technical term. So there's no good way of saying it, but I think it's worth taking a step back and going, okay, we do call it demand barking, but our dogs aren't being demanding. They're doing what we've trained them to do, number one. And they're also just putting labor into the world so that they can sort of find things that they enjoy.
I think that's a really useful distinction, because it's helpful for us to have a word to describe it. And demand barking or request barking, it makes sense to the human, so it helps us to understand what it is. It helps us to distinguish it from watchdog barking or barking because the dog is afraid, and that's an important distinction to make. But at the same time, of course, we have to see it from the dog's perspective. And actually, here is a behavior that we have been reinforcing them for. We have basically taught them to do, even if we haven't noticed that we've been teaching them to do this. And
Totally.
I think some of the things dogs do that we find annoying, quite a few of them actually are things that we have accidentally taught them to do, and we didn't realize that we were teaching them to do this. So, I mean, there are some fairly common situations in which this occurs. What kind of situation do you tend to see it in?
Well, I think the two big ones that I said are around food time, and then door opening services, patting too. I think quite a few times dogs want some dogs want a lot of physical affection, and if barking is how they get it, barking is how they'll teach themselves to get it. Soleil, one of our dogs right now, will bark for you to throw something, to throw the ball, even if it's still sort of in her mouth, or if it's in her possession, and she won't let you take it. So I think if you think of what's fun that a dog likes that they can't get for themselves, some dogs will demand bark for that, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and Pepper, my Shih Tzu, he does demand bark occasionally, and I actually, be honest though, I don't find it annoying. I find it really cute, because he's quite cute anyway, and he doesn't do it very often. If it became very common, probably I would think it was a bit much. And he's a little dog, so he has actually a very shrill bark. So it's really ear piercing when he barks. But every evening when my husband prepares his own snack, he prepares a little extra snack with a bit for the dog and a bit for the cat. So Pepper knows that he's going to get his treats. He sees the snack being prepared, and he knows that a little bit, it gets prepared in advance. So he knows that a little bit later on, my husband is going to go through to the other room. He's going to take the dog with him. The cat will come running, and they both are going to get some treats. But so he gets quite excited. He's got a good internal clock. He's seen the treat being prepared, and he knows roughly what time it's due. But, it's not exactly the same time every day. So if it gets delayed a little bit, first he gets really excited, and he's kind of panting with excitement because he knows it's going to happen.
Right.
And then there comes a point where he's like, okay, this has gone on long enough, and he barks because he wants his treat. And I don't know. I just find it really cute, actually. Not annoying at all, but he's barking to say, it's time for my treat now. Where's my treat? I want my treat, which normally comes at that time. And I just think it's really, really cute, actually. But anyway, so most people don't find it cute.
But you're allowed to. Audience, if you have a demand barking dog and you think it's cute, it's fine.
And if you
Call
do
yourself a dog trainer because you trained your dog to do it.
Yes. And if you do, let us know. You can actually send us a text message and let us know, because we would love to hear about that. But so most people actually do want to do something about this, don't they? And you've got this wonderful course about it. So I'm going to ask you to share some of the ideas that you've put into the course of things that people can do or should do if their dog is barking because they want something and we've accidentally trained them to do it.
Right. Yeah. So I think first up is to assess why, and this isn't the case for every dog, but some dogs have an endless pool of want. For example, like the Labrador and food comes to mind, and we can't just give our dogs endless food, right? But I think it's useful in a lot of cases to step back and go, okay, our dog is wanting, and can we give our dogs more of what they want? Is there a way to make our dogs less sort of needy and less wanty, So I think providing a lot more enrichment for our dogs, more exercise. Yeah, so I think it's worthwhile to sort of say, can we give our dogs more of what they like so that they're not being put into a position of sort of requesting us, demanding that we do things for them. And this is something I do go over in the course. And I think, more walks, more enrichment. There's ways for us to fit giving our dogs more of what they like into our lives in a way that doesn't burden us as much as we expect. So that's really always the first thing that I go to in these cases. That said, and I think we can all try and give our dogs more, right? I don't think any of us are exempt from that. But that said, there are still going to be dogs who exhibit this kind of behavior and we need to train for it. And training is enriching. So it's not, contrary. We're not being coercive. We're not doing anything terrible for our dogs. But I think there are certainly, there's definitely scenarios and there's definitely dogs that it doesn't matter how much enrichment this dog gets, they're still going to demand mark. And it still is something that we need to train for our own joy. And our joy matters too. So I think a useful way to think about it is, okay, our dog is using a behavior to ask for something. Can I get the dog to use a different behavior to ask for it? So is this something that I'm going to give the dog anyways? If it's door opening services, if you let your dog in and out whenever they want anyway, can the dog learn something new, a different way of asking to be let in or out? Or honestly, get a dog door if you can, because that will make your life so much better. But, so say if your dog wants patting and you're happy to pat your dog, but you don't want it to bark. I'd say get your dog to do a different behavior. So if your dog already has a suite of behaviors that they will do on cue, then simply switch the channel. And if when your dog approaches you and instead of barking, ask your dog to sit or jump up on the couch or do something else, and then you pat the dog. You can sort of preempt it by saying, here's a new key to unlock what you want, right? If it's something that your dog is not going to get. If your dog is that Labrador asking for more food when they've already eaten, then I think it's useful to do something. You sort of have two choices. You can train your dog to do something else. So an example is laying down. Lots of dogs don't bark as readily when they're laying down, or they don't bark as readily if they have something in their mouth. So turn it into time for a game. Cue your dog to go get their ball and then play a little bit of ball with them, or cue them to lay down and then they can lay down for a while and then either get a pat or maybe a ball throw or something. So
I think there are lots of options, and it's really nice to know how many options there are. But also, I love how dog focused this is. So it's really thinking about the dog's welfare and what's good for the dog's welfare. And sometimes they can have more of that thing. And I think, no one is deliberately depriving their dog of play or food and things like that. But some dogs, they really can benefit from a lot more enrichment. And most people love it actually when they start providing more enrichment for their dog or doing more training. It's nice for us because who doesn't love to see a happy dog? So I think that's a really important consideration that you mentioned.
It is, yeah. And I think taking it away from viewing it as the lens of how can our dogs annoy us less, and viewing it more of how can we either work with our dogs in partnership or how can we make our dogs' lives better so that this problem kind of isn't as prevalent, is useful. But there is also going to be cases where you can't give the dog what they want, and they can't have more food. They can't go outside because it's not safe, or what, you don't have a yard, what have you, or you can't pet your dog 24 hours a day. And then I'm perfectly fine using negative punishment in those cases. So using a timeout to get a dog to say, dog, hey, you know what? You can do anything you want right now except for barking. I'm not going to make you lay down for 10 minutes. I'm not going to, etc. I'm just going to say, if you bark at me right now, you'll go in timeout for 30 seconds. And that is, I don't feel like it should be considered like the be all and end all terrible endpoint. I think it's a useful training tool to help, remove the one particular annoying behavior while still letting the dog have free choice about what else they're doing. And that's covered in the course too.
And I think it's important to mention that still is a reward-based method. And from a scientific perspective, that still counts as a reward-based method. And it would be ridiculous if you couldn't say, okay, my dog is barking nonstop. I want to turn my back on them just for a matter of seconds, to make make a difference or to show that you're not enjoying it. And unfortunately, sometimes when people mention these things, they think, oh, you're going to be really mean and you're going to shut them in a room and leave them there for several hours. And that's not it at all. So this is it's a really effective way of dealing with the behavior. And we're also working within an environment where we're thinking about what the dog needs, what the dog wants, what the dog can and can't safely have from our perspective and point of view as well. So
Sure.
you talked about different behaviors that people might decide. Can you give me some examples of different behaviors? Because I think I wouldn't actually enjoy being barked at because the dog wants petting, but I love it when a dog comes and leans on me because they want petting. So
For sure.
I think that would be really cute. And a lot of people like to teach their dog to sit to be petted or even just to sit to request anything. And I think for a dog to have a way of asking for things that they need, that's a really useful skill for a dog, isn't it?
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I think sit is a super easy one. It's easy for a lot of people to train, either with luring or some dogs sit all the time so you can capture it. I think some dogs will still bark when they're sitting. So it might not. I guess you have to be looking for a behavior that your dog will do sort of and not bark at the same time. When you're considering their behavioral repertoire. Some people love training a hand target. It's very easy. Some people don't like dogs bopping their hands all the time. So it's sort of really up to you and how you want to be interacting with your dog. If your dog likes doing something, then put it on cue. It's why not? Yeah, I think a downstay is one of the go-tos because it's also relatively easy to train. We've got really good training plans for it. It's easy for most dogs if they don't have mobility stuff going on, and it parks the dog for in one spot for at least a little bit of time. And like I said before, most dogs won't necessarily bark when they're in a downstay for whatever reason. So I use downstay, I use sit, but I think if you like your dog, like pawing you or like you said, laying close to you or, jumping up beside you or spinning or all of these, anything that it seems to me if you've already trained your dog to do something, getting your dog to use that as a request behavior makes a ton of sense because it's less labor. And if you're already annoyed at your barking dog, less labor seems good. If you like training or if you're ready to train, honestly, a downstay is, I think, kind of the nicest and easiest, or a sit stay, or, those are ones that seem sort of easy to me.
Yeah, I think so. I think a downstay is a really good one to know about. And dog sitting, they might still be barking. It depends on the dog.
Depends on,
But I think
it's DOD, depending on dog.
Yeah, it depends on the dog. But also, I think it becomes really cute when you have a dog who knows, like, you see them and they're sitting or they're lying down, and you can see, like, from their body language and their expression, it's like they want something. I think that's really cute.
Yeah, they get all hopeful.
Yeah. And then it's our job to think, okay, what do they want? Because they might be wanting different things at different times, but it's up to us to work out what it is and give it for them. Yeah. So,
and if you really like training, and if you have a really bright dog, you can use like speech boards, or you can look at how the dog is interacting with their own environment. So learn their language. Like if your dog looks at the door or goes to the door and then comes and sits at you, then they're showing you with their behavior. Archer will come up and sort of go past and then back up, boop, boop, to be patted in a certain spot. He knows he wants to be itched somewhere, so he'll position himself, hopefully, in an area where I can reach my hand out and scratch him. So, I think watching our dogs and learning from what they're saying is useful.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we use like Sully is quite a demand barker, an operant barker. And so we use a downstay with feeding time because we do feed our dogs all together, or I mean, the livestock guardian dogs, we feed them. We have fed them separately when we had sled dogs, but the sled dogs were always quite comfortable being fed loose. So we would feed them all together. And Sully was the only barker really of that group. So we would have her do a downstay. And then she would also be given a little bit of a, last time we talked about guarding, and she would be a little bit of a guarder. So for that too. Yeah. So we use a downstay for that. And then also she demand barks outside to have the ball thrown, particularly if we have guests over. So in that we use negative punishment. So, and she's very bright. It took like 2 timeouts, and now we just give the warning cue occasionally, and she'll be like, "Oh, okay, now's not the time for barking. I'll go find my own stick." Yeah. So she doesn't have to like do something for us in that moment. She's free to go do what she wants in the environment.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really, really nice as well. And of course, I guess it's more often when people are there. Is it more exciting for her to play fetch when there's other people there? Do you think that's why?
Yeah, is that that's a question. I don't know. Maybe I suspect it probably has to do with reinforcement history more than
Mm,
she gets stuff thrown for her a lot. Um,
mm,
so, but maybe when people are around, if she barks a couple times more, we're more likely to throw something to shut her up because we're like, oh,
mm.
we're talking. So it might be sort of like an antecedent thing. Maybe
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah.
So demand barking is happening because basically we've trained the dogs to do it, and so we're now no longer rewarding them for doing that, but rewarding them for some other behavior instead that we would like them to do. I think that's the general principle, really.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of sort of advice or conversation that I think it would be useful to have about demand barking is extinction. So I believe a piece of advice that you might hear is ignore it and it will go away. And if your dog has only tried demand barking on once or twice, then that might work, right? So essentially just stop reinforcing the behavior. But if your dog has a long reinforcement history, like if it's an adult dog that came to you as an adult and has this sort of ingrained behavior, or if you've realized through sort of looking into it that you've been rewarding the dog for a long time, then what will almost certainly happen is a behavioral process called extinction, where the dog will try even harder. And I think it's unpleasant for the human, but I also think it's veering into unpleasant territory for the dog, right? The rules have changed and there's no new rule in place. So they're just like, what? This used to get me padding. This used to get me door opening services. I'm going to do it harder and louder. And you see dogs getting a little bit, in my opinion, they can get a little bit upset, right?
Mm.
This used to work and it's not anymore. What's going on? Why? So I think in cases where your dog goes into that extinction process where they try louder and harder, pawing harder if they were pawing you, barking longer and louder if they were barking, I don't think that's pleasant for the dog. So
Mm.
instead of going right to extinction or extinguishment of a behavior that was previously reinforced, I think it's kinder to train them to do something else. If you're going to give them that thing, or use one of the other techniques that we talked about if you're not. Yeah. So give them a new rule. Don't just let the old rule diffuse. If the dog is doing this thing where, I tried to stop patting, but then he just got more and more and more barky. And it's very predictable that dogs will try this. It's a well understood behavioral phenomenon. Yeah. So I would say don't let extinction be your go-to if your dog is getting to that point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's another one of those common misconceptions. And also for the person doing it, I'm going to throw in a technical term. So you talked about the dog barking more and more because it's no longer working and they're trying to make it work. And we call that an extinction burst. And I think people can find that really frustrating. And also people will often give up at that point. So it's really much better to think about what would I like the dog to do instead? And how can I train them to do that instead of this behavior, as well as making sure that they're within reason getting the thing that they want or more of the thing that they would like to have. Yeah.
For sure.
So you have a course about this. If people want to know more about the course and learn about it, where do they go?
So you can go to my website. I have all of my online courses on my website. And the course is called Peace and Quiet, a new normal for demand barking. There we go. For the people listening on the pod, I put that in air quotes, a new normal for demand barking dogs. So that's up at my website, and you can read about the course and sign up for it right at my website.
And that's KristiBenson.com.
Yes, KristiBenson.com.
And we'll put that link in the show notes. And awesome. So thank you for telling us about that. And if your dog is a demand barker, I hope this has helped you, and do write in and let us know, or send us a text message and tell us what your dog demand barks for, because it would be really fun to know.
I forgot to say this earlier, but there's CEUs available for the course, both through CCBDT and PPG.
Perfect. That's really good. Good information. Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to ask about that. Okay, so it's time for the book section. What have you been reading?
Okay, so I don't even remember how I found this book, but I found it and I listened to it as an audiobook. It's called Spoiler Alert, You're Gonna Die. Unveiling Death One Question at a Time. And it's by Jacquie Purcell, and Korttany Finn. So again, that doesn't usually work, but
Yeah, I can see it.
yeah.
Cool.
So it was written by, I think, I finished it a couple weeks ago, but it was written by, I think, a coroner. And it was like a question and answer thing. So it was sort of like people's your curious questions that if you had, free will to ask a coroner whatever you secretly wanted to, about what happens to your body when you die, what happens, naturally, but also what do coroners do, what do funeral directors do, how does embalming work, what happens with your possessions and your family and all of this stuff. So it sort of has this very interesting, it feels kind of like, oh, we shouldn't ask that, but yeah, I have been curious about that. Going through that, and the authors are very gentle, so it's not like a upsetting read, but it's more of an interesting walk through from a very gentle perspective of what the people are doing with your remains and with your body and how death works and how decomposition works, and then what can you do with your body after you die. And it was very interesting, and it ended with this sort of discussion about what would a coroner and sort of the people who handle death, what would they prefer you to do, like what, and they're, so having information readily available for them about how you want your remains treated, and, passwords, stuff
yeah.
like this, right? that don't wait until the reading of your will, for all of this stuff. So it not only was it just like an interesting read, but it was also kind of made me think, oh, this is probably something that it would be nice to think about a little bit more.
That sounds really interesting. Like it has answers to lots of questions that people would like to know, but also probably raises lots of questions for things that everyone should think about, and we probably don't like thinking about.
Yeah, and it definitely. I think we do ourselves a disservice as like humans, especially as aging humans, if we don't get comfortable talking about death and dying. So I think this is a little bit, of a walk in that journey. I didn't love the question and answer format in an audiobook. It wasn't as well handled as I would have liked. But even with that, it was a good read. So, but I found it sort of like a little bit weird how it was hard to tell what was a question. There's two narrators and you couldn't tell who is narrating at a particular point. So,
yeah. Oh, well, still, it sounds good. So thank you for telling me about that. I have been reading a novel. That's Junie by Shalene Knight.
Okay.
I love that cover, actually. I think that's a really nice cover with all the different coloured dresses. So this is set in Hogan's Alley in Vancouver in the 1930s. So Hogan's Alley was a black area in Vancouver where there were lots of clubs and restaurants that lots of people from other parts of Vancouver came to in the evening. So it was a really popular nightlife area, and it's set there, and it's told mostly through the eyes of Junie, who is a girl whose mum is a singer in one of the clubs. And she's very artistic. So she sees all the things around her and she sees all the colors. And she has a close friend, another girl her age, who's a really close friend in the school. And she has a couple of adults who also kind of look out for her a bit, which is really helpful because actually her mum drinks too much. And I read the first half of it all in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. It gives you a few different perspectives of different characters, and it's a really good read. And so what happened to Hogan's Alley was that actually the city of Vancouver bulldozed it to make space for a road. So it doesn't exist anymore, although there is a society about the history of Hogan's Alley. So these days you can still find out something about it. But so it's set in the period when Hogan's Alley was such a vibrant community, and you really get a sense of what the community was like and therefore what's been lost. But also through Junie's eyes, you get a sense, kind of a foreboding, that things are going to start falling apart and not be the same again anymore. So that's a really good read. I've really, really enjoyed reading it. And it's nice to read something set in Vancouver in the 1930s. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Very cool. That sounds great.
Yeah, it is a great read. So thank you for listening. That's all we have time for today. Please subscribe to make sure that you are the first to find out whenever we have a new show. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Positive Posting Conversation. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show and write us a review via your podcast app. For the show notes, visit companionanimalpsychology.com. This show was produced by Zazie Todd. The music is Melody from Paris by Studio Le Bousse. See you next time.